The thing that makes this episode of The Testament so terrifying is not the violence. It is not the eyes. It is not even the marriages. It is the way the episode quietly reveals that Gilead survives by teaching women to erase themselves before anyone else has the chance to do it for them. Two Sides of the Same Coin is not just about Daisy and Agnes living opposite lives. It is about how both girls are trapped inside systems that demand obedience in different forms. One grew up in freedom and is learning how fear works. The other grew up inside fear and is only now beginning to understand what freedom even means. The episode opens with Daisy listening to her radio in secret, and immediately the atmosphere feels lonely. The way she speaks about information in Gilead is chilling, because she is describing a society where truth itself has become dangerous. She says that the people inside Gilead are not hearing what she hears, and even if they did, they would never say it out loud. That line quietly explains the entire psychology of Gilead. Fear does not only silence people physically, it rewires them mentally until silence becomes instinct. People stop asking questions because surviving matters more than truth. And Daisy is beginning to understand that surviving inside Gilead means constantly pretending. Then the episode flashes back to Toronto, and the contrast is almost painful. Daisy is standing outside a coffee shop waiting for Mayday, looking like an ordinary teenage girl in an ordinary city. But the scene feels tense because she already knows her life is over. The woman casually mentioning Mayday as if it were small talk is such a classic resistance tactic. Everything in the scene is coded. Nobody can speak directly because direct speech gets people killed. What is brilliant here is that the resistance network feels exhausted instead of glamorous. This is not some superhero rebellion. These are tired people whispering in cafes and hiding frightened teenagers because the world has become too dangerous for honesty. Meanwhile, Agnes is entering a completely different nightmare. Her story in this episode is devastating because she still wants to believe there is dignity inside the system. When Paula shows her the matches and Garth is not among them, you can physically feel her heart drop. The scene is quiet, but emotionally it is brutal. Agnes is trying to hold onto this tiny fantasy that maybe love can still exist somewhere inside arranged obedience. But Gilead does not allow women to choose desire. It only allows them to perform usefulness. Commander Weston immediately represents the horror of power, disguised as stability. Paula points him out as the man Agnes should impress because he is powerful, and that sentence alone explains how women are valued in Gilead. Not by happiness, not by compatibility, by proximity to male power. Paula genuinely believes she is helping Agnes because Gilead has trained her to think survival is the same thing as success. That is what makes Paula such a tragic character. She is cruel, but her cruelty comes from internalized terror. She knows exactly what happens to girls who fail. The lunch scene is one of the best written moments in the episode because it shows how normalized all of this has become for the girls. They discuss marriage assignments the same way normal teenagers would discuss college applications or prom dates. That normalization is horrifying. Shunammite talks excitedly about Commander Weston because she has been raised to see powerful men as prizes. Becca being matched with the commander who got her drunk is even darker because nobody treats it like abuse. It is simply presented as reality. The girls are expected to accept violation as destiny. And Agnes becoming hurt because Becca received Commander Chapin instead of her says everything about emotional deprivation in Gilead. Agnes is starving for genuine connection so badly that even the smallest kindness becomes romantic in her mind. That is why her conflict with Becca feels so painful. Becca says she never wanted any of this, while Agnes accuses her of refusing to grow up. But Agnes is not really angry at Becca. She is angry because Becca still remembers that another kind of life is possible. Agnes does not. Then Commander Weston enters the school, and suddenly, the entire atmosphere changes. The girls immediately begin whispering about Mayday investigations because fear moves faster than truth in Gilead. Nobody knows anything for certain, but everyone knows enough to panic. Weston carries this terrifying calmness around him. He does not need to yell because the system itself already terrifies people on his behalf. The flashbacks with Rita are some of the strongest material in the episode because they expose how impossible Daisy's situation really is. Rita telling Daisy she needs to leave Canada immediately shows how far Gilead's influence has spread. There is nowhere fully safe anymore. And when Daisy says she is not the one who should be hiding, you can hear the anger inside her finally surfacing. She still believes justice should matter. Rita, meanwhile, understands something much darker. Survival comes first. The conversation about Daisy's parents is heartbreaking because it strips away the last illusion she had about her identity. Her real parents died getting her out of Gilead. That means Daisy's entire existence was built on sacrifice before she was even old enough to understand it. Her angry "fuck Gilead" feels earned because for the first time she realizes this system did not just ruin abstract lives, it destroyed her family. But Rita's response is even sadder. "I'm trying my best." Amanda Brugel delivers Rita with this exhausted emotional weight that makes every line feel lived in. Rita knows hatred alone is not enough to defeat Gilead. Survival requires patience, deception, and compromise. Daisy wants revolution. Rita wants her alive. The detail about Daisy not getting her period is also incredibly important, because the show quietly reminds us that fertility remains the foundation of Gilead's power structure. Even outside Gilead, women's bodies are still political territory. Rita immediately understands the danger because every biological detail matters in this world. The interrogation scene with Commander Weston is psychologically terrifying precisely because almost nothing happens physically. Daisy sees her radio sitting beside him and immediately panics because the object represents her hidden self. Weston questions her in such a calm, methodical way that it feels invasive. He is not trying to discover truth, he is trying to make her afraid enough to betray herself. The flashbacks to Rita training Daisy are fascinating because they completely deconstruct the fantasy of espionage. Daisy thinks she is becoming a spy, something exciting and heroic. Rita immediately shuts that fantasy down. "You're a sponge." That line matters because it reframes survival as observation rather than action. Daisy's job is not to save the world. Her job is to absorb it without breaking. And then Rita explains why June is involved. Because she still has a daughter trapped in Gilead. Suddenly, the entire emotional legacy of The Handmaid's Tale crashes into the episode. June's war against Gilead was never ideological alone. It was maternal. Every sacrifice connects back to Hannah. Daisy is walking into a conflict that began long before she understood it. When Daisy leaves the interrogation and hides in the classroom, the panic attack feels painfully real. The eyes are terrifying because they force people to question themselves. Daisy says they make you feel like you've done something wrong even when you haven't, and Agnes casually responds, "That's just what they do." That line perfectly captures the tragedy of Agnes. She has normalized psychological abuse because she has never known anything else. And yet Agnes is trying to comfort Daisy is strangely beautiful. She invites her home. She calls her brave. For a moment, the walls between them disappear. That is why the episode's title matters so much. Daisy and Agnes are mirrors. One girl sees oppression clearly because she grew up outside it. The other sees safety and structure because she grew up trapped inside it. But emotionally, they are both lonely girls desperate for connection. The Pearl Girl flashbacks are deeply unsettling because they show how Gilead markets itself. The recruitment is soft, warm, almost nurturing. Food, shelter, prayer, belonging. The Pearl Girls do not recruit through force. They recruit through emotional vulnerability. That is what makes them dangerous. They offer certainty to people who feel lost. The optical illusion metaphor Daisy narrates is probably the thematic center of the entire episode. Once you see both women in the image, you cannot unsee either of them. That is exactly what Daisy is experiencing with Gilead. She sees the horror, but she also sees why some people surrender to it. The structure, the certainty, the illusion of purpose. That duality terrifies her, because it means evil is not always obvious.